Welcome to Straight from the Drafts. I'm your host and cheerleader-in-chief, Nao. This weekly voice note is for the girlies in business who are in need of a pep talk during the tricky moments, or a reminder to stop and celebrate when life is moving so fast that you forget to cheer for yourself. Here we bring together strategy and mindset to build purpose-led businesses and create content that helps us smash our goals instead of someone else's version of success. Whether you're sitting on the sofa, out on your hot girl walk, or I'm the soundtrack to doing your dishes, I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome back for episode 14. If you're listening for the first time, then fun fact for you, that was actually a brand new introduction. In the last episode, there wasn't one at all, and I shared that there were some updates happening in my business, which meant that the original intro didn't feel quite right. And I've had a couple of weeks off the podcast now to work out what that looks like, record a fresh new introduction, and I've even picked new music too. I think it's quite Disney Channel in the early 2000s, but let me know if you agree with that. But I am really leaning into sort of 2000s nostalgia for the changes in the business at the moment. And I suppose that is the joy of having your own business and your own podcast, isn't it? You get to decide. And actually, that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today, sort of pivoting and making big decisions generally. So a little introduction before we get into what I hope will be the useful section of today's episode. I've had a lot of big decisions to make recently. I've had a niggling feeling for months now that I need to make some changes, but they felt too significant and too scary to really take action. And also, to be fair to myself, I've had a really busy summer, so I haven't necessarily had the headspace to properly sit down, have a think, and work things out. In my business, the core service that I've always offered in the 3 years was social media management, dominated by Instagram management. And that's been between 85 and 92% of my income for the past 2 years. So when I was starting to get the feeling that I wanted to step away from that service, it wasn't just a little bit scary, it was actually a huge decision. Financially, that's the service that has kept my business not just alive, but growing since day one. And it's the service that I set up the business to deliver. But for a number of reasons, which I think I'll dive into more next week, I decided to take a look at that and make some changes. So today I wanted to share a bit about what that process looked like, how I made the decisions that I've made, and particularly what you can do if you're feeling really stuck and overwhelmed when it comes to making big decisions. It feels like there are a lot of business owners right now making changes or pivoting and feeling that stuck, unclear feeling. So if that is you, then I am cheering you on, and I will just say be kind and be patient with yourself, because I know it can be a really frustrating headspace to be in, but I do think it's something that you can't really rush. You can't force a light bulb moment, and often that is what we need. We just need a light bulb moment and it'll all click into place. I do also feel like this happens a lot in summer for people. And I don't know whether the September energy gets everyone feeling like they've got to do something new, or whether the September energy is because everyone ends up doing new things, because we see it as a bit of a reset, like a second new year, thanks to our school days and when we came back after the summer holidays. But whichever way round it is, I am sending lots of love if you're in that season. And if not, then I'm sure there will still be a couple of golden nuggets in here, and you can come back to this episode whenever you do need the pep talk. So if you are feeling stuck and you've got big decisions to make, then the first sort of tip that I would share is to give yourself space. I know that sounds a bit wanky, and you might be rolling your eyes because it feels obvious, but really, actually give yourself space. Business has been intentionally quieter for me over the summer, but actually social plans like weddings, hen-dos, birthdays have meant that it's still been really busy. My capacity has been filled to the brim, and I haven't really had the spare time to take myself off to a cafe and journal and just think. For me, I do need that time. Once I've made a decision, I can action it pretty quickly, because I do really trust my gut. But if that decision and that instinct isn't there, then I think it's probably for me because life is too noisy and busy for me to hear it. Because often as well, there are action steps to take off the back of big decisions. And particularly if you're doing a pivot in your business, there's a lot to think about. So I think you really need to commit to making space for it. I know not everyone operates that way, and I do believe in sort of messy, scrappy action. But I do think if you make space for it, you kind of also make the space to take the action that comes off the back of it. So for example, I've stripped my website right back and taken a lot of services information off there because I didn't want to advertise for services that I no longer wanted to accept inquiries for. I don't want to waste anyone's time. But now I need to make the space to do all of those updates and restore the website to a functional, helpful place for people to go. And don't get me wrong, I will likely delegate that to my brand and web designer because she can do everything 10 times quicker and better than I can. But I still need to make the space to write the updated copy and assign that work over. So if it's a big decision, acknowledge and accept that it will probably take up a big chunk of time. This probably won't be something that you can resolve and change during the 10 minutes between 2 client meetings. The second thing is recognizing external noise and coming back to you. Are you feeling indecisive and stuck because you're looking too much at what other people are doing, worrying about what other people are thinking, or comparing yourself and finding business owners who are already doing the thing that you want to do, so therefore you've decided that they must be doing it better than you ever could, so what's the point? Are you feeling like you should be planning something right now just because you've seen loads of other people doing it? I think it's potentially easing up a bit now, but absolutely everyone in the online space was running a mastermind earlier this year, or at least that's how it felt every time I opened up Instagram. And at some stage, so many experienced social media managers were setting up courses to train new social media managers. And it felt a bit pyramid schemey, but that's a different topic. And if you're in that industry or it's people that you admire, it's easy to tell yourself that that should be your next goal too. And before you know it, you're building towards someone else's dream life instead of your own. So, write down what your end goal is. Write down what it is that you want your week to look like, how many hours you want to work, and actually be honest with yourself and make sure that you actually want it. You don't have to say that you want to work 3 hours a day and only work 3 days a week because someone else on Instagram is doing that. And I know that sounds probably really patronizing to say, but it's very interesting like how much you take on that you don't realize is actually other people's goals and what other people are achieving, and you start thinking that it's what you should be doing or what you should want from your life, even if it's not, because it might not even be something that you care about. So if people are like taking the whole summer holidays off, cool. If they've got kids, then that makes so much sense. If you've got childcare on a Friday and everyone talks about taking Fridays off, that might be your most productive day. Or you might just really love Christmas and you want to take more time off in December and you don't really care about summer. I actually did is it called the Lionsgate portal journaling for the first time this year, which was on the 8th of the 8th. You write a journal entry as though it's the 8th of August 2026. So this year you write it as if it's next year and so on. And you write about your day, your life, your career, all the things. And you write it as though that is your reality. It is written as a diary entry from that day. And you know what was really interesting? When I really thought about what I wanted and started writing this a year from now journal entry, there wasn't a huge gap between the life I have now and that dream life, or whatever you quote unquote dream life. I'm doing air quotes, but you can't see that. Because like, I don't have to work a 9 to 5. I don't have to work within those hours. I can technically work whenever I fancy. But actually my partner, my family, all my friends do work in that structured Monday to Friday work routine. So I do want to be wrapping up at 5 p.m. so that I can spend evenings with those people and I don't have to sacrifice weekend time to catch up, because I know that if I have like a slow, faffy morning, that is eating into my evening time. And the irony is, it's currently 5:15 as I'm recording this, and I'm probably going to be sat recording and editing for another hour instead of being downstairs spending time with my partner. And I was chatting to a client last week who has grown her revenue incredibly. She's done so well. She's grown her revenue so much in the last 2 years. Now she's out earning her partner, which was kind of always her goal. Love that for her. And to keep growing that revenue now feels quite intimidating to her, because she's like, right, well, I don't want to increase my prices beyond what they are now, and neither do I want to bring in a team. So I'm currently capped. But when we were chatting, we came to the conclusion that actually she's very happy earning as she is now. The next step isn't more revenue. It isn't becoming a 6-figure business owner. The next step was maintaining the income that she does earn while reducing her hours, so that she can actually book time off or not be hunched over at her desk for 14 hours a day when she is working. And it's little realizations like that I think that help make these decisions, focusing on what your goals are and what would actually make you happier in the day-to-day. Because these sort of online milestones of 5k months, 10k months, 6-figure years, like they're just numbers. And I think unless you kind of look at your bank statements and what's coming in and out, and you work out what a figure that would actually sort of change your life and change your day-to-day reality, that's the number. If you want to work towards a financial milestone, then do it that way. Work out what number makes sense to you, and it doesn't matter if it's not a sexy number. It doesn't matter if it's £4,320 a month. Like, it can be random because it's not random to you. Taking on a 5k, 10k, 6-figure goal is random. It's just marketing. It's the same as the whole like, oh, engagement rings should cost 3 months' salary. Like, that's marketing. It's just made up. Why are we planning our whole lives around these made up things? So yeah, take time, number one, and in that time, really come back to you. Now, number 3 may sound like a contradiction to the last point, but bear with me. Chat things through with people that you trust and who know you. And this isn't about taking on other people's opinions. I know I've just said come back to you and what you want. So it's not about letting other people's opinions take over. But I know personally I process things better if I talk them through with someone. And the reality of this has looked like some very long chats with my sister. We've been on some long sister dates over the last couple of months where we've sat and talked through the changes, and knowing that everything that she suggests, that's a tongue twister with my braces in, knowing that everything she suggests is because she knows me well and she can ask me the right questions to help me figure out what it is that I'm feeling or why it is that I'm procrastinating. And I also went back to some feedback that I got from a retreat in January. I had it, we all kind of wrote on pieces of paper for each other, and I'd made some notes in an old notebook, which I pulled out. And that was really interesting. So for context, this was a retreat with some business pals that I'd known since we all went on a retreat together in January of last year. So we have all known each other quite a while, and know each other quite well. So we've been talking about goals and things like that. These are people that I really respect, and also people that I would say know me well enough to share opinions, but are distanced enough from the business and from me that they don't sort of see or necessarily know my insecurities. So we'll just suggest things based on what they see me as totally capable of. Even if I'm sat there thinking like, what? I can't do that. I'm not qualified for that. It's really interesting to hear that from an outside perspective, but still someone that you'd consider to be in your inner circle. And I want to add to this point something potentially controversial, because I do think it's been slowly killing my self-trust and my decision-making. But try not to ask the robots I really don't use AI that much in the business for client work or anything like that, but I was using it to chat through my offers and sort of the direction of the business. And I know that some people find it super, super helpful. And at first, I think I did too. But when I really got into this freeze mode over the summer, I found myself relying on it and going around in circles because it wasn't giving me the answers that I felt I needed from it. And I realized that I stopped trusting my own judgment because I ended up waiting to get validated by ChatGPT. And I know that sentence coming out of my mouth sounds ridiculous, that I was waiting for a robot to validate my ideas. But I think that's kind of where I'd got to, because if I had an idea about a new offer, rather than just running with it, I would go to the robots and go round and round in circles, trying to perfect it rather than just taking action. So if you can, speak to actual people in your circle. The fourth and final tip that I want to share with you is when you think you've made a decision, say it out loud. I did say at the start of this episode that I don't think you can rush the light bulb moments, but I do think a little bit of pressure helps you move forward. Whether you tell a friend or announce it on social media, saying it out loud that you've got something coming or setting a date for an announcement can really force you into action. If you've been in indecision mode for a long stretch of time, it can be really hard to get out of it. If you've not posted on socials in weeks, it can be really hard hitting post on that first piece of content. But you don't have to have it all figured out when you do that. It just forces yourself to have a bit of accountability. Otherwise, you'll just float around and talk yourself out of it again. In messages to people that when I've been talking about this, I've been describing the feeling as sat at a fork in the road and not being sure which direction I'm taking. So this would be like putting my indicator on. I'm not necessarily pulling out into the road right this second, but I'm letting the cars know behind me what my plan is. I'm getting ready. And I have forced myself into a little content series, sharing the updates, because I think calling it a series creates expectation that I'm going to keep talking about it. And I can't just post one random comeback post and then ghost and go back into overthinking mode. Well, I can, but I'm kind of giving myself that accountability not to do that. It also means that I'm actually hyping myself up behind the scenes and getting excited about the next steps, all under the guise of hyping up my audience. And instead of ending on a quote today, I actually wanted to end with a concept that I think is a great reminder to end the episode on. I heard it on another podcast, and now I can't remember which one it was. It was most likely one of Grace Beverley's Working Hard episodes, because that's what I've been listening to a lot recently. But it was essentially the idea that there are one-way and two-way decisions. And most decisions are two-way. You can always change your mind later down the line. Most decisions can be reversed. It's that idea of like going through a door and the door doesn't lock behind you. You can walk back through that door. And it might feel huge and scary now, but the likelihood is if we're talking about a business decision here, then you're probably not bound to it forever because you're in charge. Even if it is massively inconvenient to reverse it, it's still likely reversible. And I know that it can feel scary because business often these days means documenting the behind the scenes and sharing online. So it kind of feels like if we fail, then we fail publicly and we fail out loud. But honestly, no one is paying that much attention. And we go back to point one here. We need to stop worrying about what other people think and operate based on what we need and what we want to do. So, in summary, you have all the answers. You've got yourself this far and you can navigate this chapter too. So, be very kind to yourself in the meantime. And if you want to chat, if you're feeling like this and you just want someone to offload to, like I've been feeling this way for months now, and very, very grateful to all of the people who have listened to me and chatted it through with me. So I'm very happy to pay that forward. Send me a DM over on Instagram, or at the very least, know that I am cheering you on. But I hope you have a gorgeous rest of your week. And yeah, I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye.